Boeing, in the past, was famous as a premier manufacturer of commercial jetliners. But now it's famous for its unfathomable culture. It's a culture of cover-up that hides the disturbing issues. It's a culture of DEI, prioritizing diversity over safety. Recently, we discovered something else: the culture of blame. Indeed, for Boeing CEO David Calhoun, the serious problems on the Boeing Starliner over the past decade have never been his responsibility. Find out everything in today's episode of Techmap. But before we begin, let's subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the latest space news. The Starliner crew flight test was supposed to be a 10-day flight, but it turned out to be a journey that even neither NASA nor Boeing knew when the spacecraft would come back. Although Starliner batteries just have a limitation of 45 days, in fact, NASA's manager, Steve Stitch, believes it could be extended. We talked about a 45-day limit, limited by the crew module batteries on Starliner, and we're in the process of updating that limit. We've been looking at those batteries and their performance on orbit. They're getting recharged by the station, and that risk hasn't really changed. So the risk for the next 45 days is essentially the same as the first 45 days, he added. Starliner, in fact, is rated to stay as long as 210 days in orbit once operational missions begin, he pointed out. But as this is only Starliner's third mission in space, and its first with astronauts, NASA had been unsure about the battery performance in orbit before now. Stitch said, "We haven't decided how long to extend it yet. Starliner has 12 different batteries," he explained. Before this flight, similar batteries sat on the ground for a year and were then tested to make sure there were no defects, and none were found. What we really are doing now is looking at the performance of the battery in flight. We don't see any degradation in any of the cells where the batteries are, he added. While Starliner is hibernating, Boeing and NASA are resolving the ongoing issues involving helium leaks and thruster problems of the spacecraft. Simultaneously, they also want to take advantage of the time when Starliner's service module is intact to gather more data in preparation for future missions. On June 15th, they conducted the hot fire test for the spacecraft in space. The result is pretty optimistic. The failed thrusters are prone to overheating during docking, but are still estimated to be good for coming back, Boeing Space's Mark Nappy announced. However, they were unable to find the root cause of the issues, and to avoid another mistake, the ground test was added. The additional test on July 3rd at NASA's White Sands Test Facility in New Mexico witnessed Starliner's Reaction Control System, or RCS, thruster testing. It's called the acceptance test, which is standard for all new thrusters, as a quality check and to gather baseline performance data. This thruster was planned for a future Starliner mission. Beginning next week, teams will run the thruster through similar conditions that Starliner experienced after launch on the way to the space station. The tests will include replicating the phase of the crew flight test from launch to docking. Then tests will be performed to replicate what thrusters will experience from undocking to landing. Meanwhile, the teams on console at NASA's Mission Control Center in Houston and Boeing's Mission Control Center at Kennedy Space Center checked out various systems of the spacecraft with the crew. It's safe to say that all current work on Starliner is updated pretty frequently through the teleconference, X, and website. All of them are positive, as a way to say, please stop saying Starliner and astronauts stranded in space. They are safe. The vehicle can return, and we are just delaying their return to research. While the keywords including Boeing Starliner and stranded in space were going viral on social media, Boeing CEO David Calhoun sat there and mouthed off like he and his company were innocent. In front of Senator Josh Hawley, the Boeing CEO, who is compensated $33 million in 1 year, still confidently declared,
"Senator, I'm sticking this through. I'm proud of having taken the job. I'm proud of our
this
safety record, and I am
You're proud
very
of this safety
proud
record.
of our Boeing people.
You're proud of this safety record.
I am proud of every action we have taken."
This declaration was given at the hearing on June 18 in front of a Senate panel over the company's safety and quality lapses, a host of whistleblower allegations about company corner cutting and retaliation, and his own pay package. Even when it comes to the failure of the Starliner project, as he said last year, it's the fault of the government, of the fixed-price contract, not of Boeing. We have a couple of fixed-price development programs we have to just finish, and we'll never do them again. That fixed-price development world has to stop. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work for us, and it doesn't work for our customers, in my not-so-humble opinion. A fixed-price contract sets the terms of a project and establishes the price of goods or services. It outlines exactly what the seller is required to do and the seller's obligations for a firm price. If you sell your goods at a lower price, you will benefit from the leftovers. Otherwise, you have to cover the loss. For decades, Boeing, as well as other legacy contractors, was nourished with so-called cost-plus contracts applying for major development programs, including the Space Launch System and Orion. A cost-plus contract is a construction agreement that requires reimbursement for project costs, as well as a markup that covers the contractor's overhead and profit. In other words, the name is a shorthand way of remembering what the contract covers: project costs plus contractor markup. Thanks to such a contract, the Space Launch System has been delayed for 6 years after its first targeting a debut launch in late 2016, costing at least $13.1 billion over nearly 25 years, resulting in approximately $6 billion in cost increases. Orion spacecraft is not a much brighter case. For fiscal years 2006 through 2023, the Orion program had expended funding totaling $22.9 billion in nominal dollars. This is equivalent to $29.4 billion in 2024 dollars, using the NASA New Start inflation indices. In 2024, the U.S. Congress approved up to $339 million for the NASA Orion spacecraft. Despite the huge investment, Orion is in hot water with its heat shield during re-entry in NASA's Artemis 1 mission in 2022. Worse, NASA has yet to find a root cause for this problem, and this has become the biggest risk for Artemis 2's timeline in September 2025. To date, it's unclear how much money Boeing milked under such contracts, but the price they have paid is incalculable. That is the reputation of a company that was once America's greatest, was painstakingly built by the real Boeing engineers. Yet, just within less than 30 years, Boeing has gone sideways. Boeing's new leadership is like a bottomless begging bag. The $1 billion in Congress's budget always makes their mouth water. Thanks to the profile of decades of spaceflight experience, it's easy for Boeing to bill the government for all of its expenses and earn a fee. Obviously, NASA then has to pay for all of the cost overruns and delays. But now everything has changed. Boeing had to deliver a flyable spacecraft for a firm, fixed price. Thus, every penny spent on Starliner meant one less penny in profit. To avoid the greater loss, they came up with a more terrible decision, allocating fewer resources to Starliner than it needed to thrive. This bitter reality is not only in space. We can see that clearly in military fixed-price contracts Boeing joined, such as the transport aircraft KC-46, the T-7A Red Hawk trainer, or the MQ-25A Stingray tanker drone. The technical malfunctions and delays forced Boeing to compensate billions of dollars in each, and in the end this created a huge financial crisis for the company. Despite the efforts in economic recovery, including increasing revenues and narrowing losses, Boeing's financials in the third quarter of 2023 continued to be dragged down by its defense, space, and security division. This division, which includes missile production for the military and space activities such as satellites and the Starliner spacecraft, lost $1.7 billion during the 2023 first 3 quarters. Of course, with Boeing's current comprehensive crisis, the turbulence for the company is far from over. And that just about wraps it up for today's episode. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.